I'm Makini Smith. In 2009, while going through a divorce, I decided to jump straight into entrepreneurship. In 2012, I lost my sister and asked myself, what legacy do I want to leave behind? Since then, I've become a serial entrepreneur, helping other women publish their books, produce their podcasts, and reach their big goals to walk in their greatness. I realized the importance of sharing our stories of resilience and how it can be another's guide to walk in a manner worthy of their calling. We are blessed to be a blessing, so get ready to be blessed with an inspiring testimony. Hey, Legacy Leavers, thank you for joining us on the Walk in My Stilettos podcast, the top 1.5% most popular show globally, where we have conversations with extraordinary women that are letting us step into their shoes. I help women to own their voice, to create impact, prosperity, and legacy. I get inspired when I see another woman succeeding, but I'm more interested in her backstory and her mindset on how she got there. So since you're already here, you may as well subscribe. Today we have a special episode. I'm sharing a conversation that I had with Naomi Haile on the Power of Why podcast. We had such an amazing conversation, and I think that you should listen to this episode if you want to define success on your own terms, if you struggle with seeing a vision for your life, if you're working towards moving from a mindset of fear to faith, or if you want to create gratitude statements that shift your energy and your spirit. I hope you enjoy this episode, and we would love to hear what resonates, so feel free to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
So on the show today, I sit down with Makini Smith, who is a mindset coach and entrepreneur, host of A Walk in My Stilettos. And in this episode, we talked about moving away from a space of fear and into faith. Some of the building blocks of building a life rhythm where you are leaning in to what fuels you, and Makini's interesting take on SMART goals. And it's probably not what you would expect. We talked about some of the life challenges she's had, the loss of her sister, going through a divorce, being a single mother, and how she was able to kind of turn these experiences into building a life that she's living now, and to start, thinking and creating and building in a way that has impact in mind, that has legacy in mind, and really supporting other people on their own journeys. This is a really powerful episode, so I hope you enjoy. My name is Naomi Haile, and today I am here with the wonderful Makini Smith. Makini, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
I was telling you before we hit record that my intention actually was to reach out to you this fall, and I love how things have aligned. I love the work that you're doing. And so for the audience, Makini Smith is an award-winning entrepreneur and the founder of A Walk in My Stilettos. Today, Makini is a mindset coach and Procter Gallagher certified consultant who works to help people to improve the quality of their lives. And not only does she share her message through her coaching practice, she also speaks at events, conferences, live functions. And Makini has shared her expertise on global media platforms, including Shed Lane, XO Nicole, iHeartRadio, CBC, Vice News, only to name a few. And Makini is also the author of 4 books. A Walk in My Stilettos is one where she walks readers through her life experience. Another book that delves into affirmations, and then 2 gratitude journals, and one that specifically is, designed for couples. And in 2018 actually, Makini created A Walk in My Stilettos, the podcast, which is now one of the top 2% most popular podcasts globally, which is insane. Congratulations.
It's actually jumped up to 1.5, so thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Update 1.5% most popular podcast globally. Makini, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, giving that beautiful intro. Like I said, it's a complete honor to be on your show.
I would love if you could give us a little bit of insight into your origin story, how you grew up. Do you have siblings, the whole 9 yards?
As soon as you added in, do you have siblings? I was like, oh, wow, this is going to take long. So I'll get that part out of the way to start. I'll see how much of a Coles Notes version I can give you.
Mm.
But I think I'm up to 21 siblings. I think I've lost count. But my mother has 5 children. My parents had 3 together, and my father, who is a Rastafarian, has many. So yeah. In terms of growing up, I grew up in government housing to a single mom. My parents split when I was a year old, and I grew up in a community where, there were a lot of, I'm going to say, families that were supporting each other. So my mom was working multiple jobs. She was hardly ever home, because she had to make ends meet. But I was being raised by my older siblings and, my best friend's parents, and spending time at the neighbor's house being raised by them while they were watching other kids. And when we moved out of that area, when my mom worked her way up to buying her first property, we moved out into the town of Markham. And it was a complete, I'm going to say, a culture shock to me, because now we moved into the subdivision, with all these cookie cutter homes, but people pulled into their garage and you had no idea who your neighbors were. You're lucky if you saw them on the driveway to wave to them. They went into their garage and they went into their home. So I went from growing up in a community where I felt connection and being safe outside to growing up feeling like a little lost. And then by the time I hit, I'm going to say about 15, 14, we moved to Scarborough, and I met, at the time, would have been my daughter's, both my daughter's father, and got pregnant when I was 17. So I was a teenage mom, but I didn't ever want to be a statistic. I always knew that I wanted to be a valuable member to society, that I wanted to contribute, that I wanted to, make an impact. And growing up in government housing in certain environments, you don't see the vision of possibility. A lot of people are living in a space of surviving. So you don't see people thriving, especially legally. So I didn't have that vision of mentorship or the idea back then of dreaming big. And fast forward the story. I mean, I had 3 children by the time I was 30 years old, going through a divorce. And that's when I jumped headfirst into entrepreneurship. And that completely, I'm going to say, shifted my perspective of what is possible. That's when I got into my own personal development. And being a single mother of 3 kids while doing real estate full time was definitely not easy. And in my second year of real estate, my sister, who was like my best friend, my support system, my confidant, in 2012, she passed away. And I shut down. My entire family was processing, the grief of losing her, because she was like the hub of the family. But that 6 months where I was trying to regain control of my mental health, I had people that were reaching out to me and letting me know what she meant to them and the difference that she made in their life. And that made me ask, what legacy do I want to leave behind? How do I want to be remembered? How do I want to make people feel? And I'm going to say I started to emulate a lot of her qualities, being there for other people, uplifting people, posting positive things online. And that led to me attracting an opportunity to meet Bob Proctor in person in 2013.
Yeah.
And for anyone who doesn't know who Bob Proctor is, he's one of the thought leaders featured in the documentary The Secret. And my whole world turned around after that. He opened up my mind to understanding, how the brain works, how energy works, spirit. It basically broke down for me in layman terms all the principles that I was learning in church, but made it more understandable for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And through that awareness, my obsession with personal development, came into play. And, his wife ended up writing the foreword for my first book. I ended up publishing 4 books of my own. Now I help other authors and such publish their books. So it just opened up my mind to possibility. And I guess that's where we got to now, the present, my obsession with personal development and helping other people tap into their potential.
Wow. First of all, I'm so sorry for the loss that you had in your life. And
Thank you.
In that moment, it probably makes absolutely no sense why this is happening, and the messages that you received, because I've heard you tell this story and it's so poignant every time I hear it, because the messages that you received afterwards, it probably, this is just an assumption, but probably really clarified like how short life is, right?
Absolutely.
Got you to ask those questions about legacy and how you want to impact other people. And so, and at the time you were working in real estate, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That was your, okay. And so can you tell us a little bit about that time in your life and how you looking back now think that that opportunity kind of landed in your inbox, and why that happened the way that it did?
Yeah, for sure. So I was selling real estate full time. And even after my sister passed away and I started to, come out of the depression, and I was doing my best to put that positivity out there, I'm going to say dove into work, to being busy. And at the time, I looked at it as, yeah, I'm good. I'm healing. But I think I was just suppressing and trying to numb myself and cover up that process of, I'm going to say, doing the things to keep busy. And as much as I was putting positive energy out there, the stranger that reached out to me to give me that opportunity to connect with Bob Proctor in person, he loved the positive tweets that I was putting out on the internet. So he just, I guess, happened to be following me on Twitter and loved the positivity. And I mean, not everyone was, I'm going to say, not everyone embraced the positivity that I was putting out. I had some people that were like, yeah, you're a little overboard, or it's too bubbly for me. Or, it was hard for me to process how me being positive made people upset. But I learned that the more that you are like, there are people that have their own stuff to deal with. I know that
there's
now.
a lot there. Yeah, there's a lot there.
But that positivity where that person felt attracted to connecting to me. And my phone number was on the internet back then. So he just happened to call and offer me this opportunity to meet Bob Proctor. And I thought it was a joke. I was like, really? I'm busy, buddy. Send me an email. And when he sent the email and I seen an actual picture of him standing next to Bob Proctor, smiling with the, address and invitation to connect, I know now that I attracted that. Sometimes we don't realize what we're doing in the moment. Sometimes we don't realize the power of our thoughts or our feelings. But knowing what I know now about the keys to manifestation, I was in the right place to align with that. So that alignment, brought that opportunity. It helped to even bring me further out of the low vibration or the, sad, depressive feelings that I was going through.
And you also don't know who's watching, right? Like, you didn't even know who this individual was at the time, right? And
absolutely,
the fact that you trusted that and you kept doing it in spite of maybe the weird feedback that you were receiving is, I think, is a true testament to just trusting yourself and knowing that, no, I'm doing this because I'm aligned with something greater than, what all of this is. So
absolutely.
That's huge.
And that's a process within itself. A lot of people don't trust themselves, right? So, the base of their trust issues of other people, but learning to trust, for me, that God is in control, and that if I follow my intuition, which is really me listening to God and having conversations with God, but following that has always led me to a better place. Sometimes we question our thoughts or our feelings or the things that we want to do, and we ask everyone around us, but that vision may have not been given to that person. So their input that they're giving you may not be what you need. They may actually block the blessing because of their own perspective, their own experiences. So learning to trust within and align.
Step my fingers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that message was not for them. And I think that's like a bigger conversation in terms of God being able to plant certain visions in your life that, with your gifts and talents are able to actualize, right? Yeah. And in a past interview, I've heard you talk a little bit about the unknown and the relationship of like fear to the unknown and then faith and belief and the unknown. I'm wondering if you could talk about maybe an experience that you have today or even like 10 years ago but what helped you move from that fear space into more of that belief in that faith space?
Yeah. So faith and fear are both beliefs in the unknown. We have the option to choose, right? But most of us have been programmed to choose fear. We've been programmed, whether it be, because as children, we're fearless, right? We go to do something and we want to explore, but then you have a parent tell you, don't do that. Or they're constantly, trying, from their perspective, they're trying to protect you, but then they're also programming you to fear things. And it may be based on their own perspective and understanding, right? So unfortunately, there's a lot that we've learned as children that we need to unlearn and relearn. And I used to fear everything: spiders, heights, traveling, the dark, every day, people. And then after I had my kids, I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder. And anxiety is, worrying about future events, while fear is a reaction to a current event. But I was in a constant state of panic. If I wasn't feeling anxious about something, I was fearful of something. So my nervous system was under attack. And it was like in overdrive and affecting my physical health. And what doctors, I don't know if they still do, but what they did back then, anyone who was dealing with anything physical that they couldn't explain, they labeled it under fibromyalgia, which, it's like chronic muscle pain. And I know a lot back then where they used to just say it's in your head. So basically, they didn't really believe any of your symptoms, because on paper, you're perfectly healthy, but you're complaining of these body aches and these pains and these heart palpitations. But, test will show that you're perfectly healthy. You're perfectly normal. But I was having these flare-ups for weeks at a time where I couldn't get out of bed, where I could, I'd need my kids' assistance to even make it to the washroom. Like, I couldn't function, but my body was reacting from living in this constant state of fear. And I talk about in my first book that the acronym for fear, most of us know it as false evidence appearing real. And I started to look at it as face everything and rise. I realized after pushing through a lot of my fears that everything that I ever wanted was on the other side of that. That's where all the rewards were. My fear of flying, once I got over that, I was able to go and see the world. My fear of insects, like, now that I've gotten over that to some degree, I can enjoy, my 2-hour nature walks every day. So the things that I was afraid of were based on my perception of a thing and based on a lot of the programming that I had to unlearn and relearn. So most of us have, we call it our terror barrier. So anytime you're either setting a goal, you're trying to skip, rungs on the ladder of success, or you're coming up against something that you're not used to, you come up against the terror barrier. So whenever you go to make a serious change in your life, anything that brings you out of your comfort zone, you're going to come up against the terror barrier. With any change that would come under the category of a major change in behavior, you're going to come up against the terror barrier, but it'll instantly and automatically be standing between you and the greatness that you desire. So when this happens, we have a choice. Out of fear, we can step back into safety and continue to experience the exact same results that we've been getting year after year that we don't want, the definition of insanity. Or we can be courageous and have faith and experience the growth that we want. And because of that, now I'm able to, like I said, travel and have, my daily outdoor walks, and to even make an impact, because I was terrified of public speaking. 10 years ago, if you told me that I would be speaking on podcasts and speaking in front of audiences and coaching thousands of women and speaking on summits, I'd be like, yeah, no, thanks. But I had to overcome those fears, right? So it's not, and I'll be honest with you, when they hear me say that, I struggle with social anxiety, or that I'm severely introverted, they're like, wow, but you speak on stages and you have a podcast and you do this and you do that. And it's like, no, the fear still exists, but I push through it. The anxiety is still there sometimes, but I'm able to minimize it so that it doesn't control me. You know what I mean? If we make a list of our fears and our doubts and our worries, we can look at those fears and then ask ourselves, what are you going to do about it? Because sometimes the things that we fear are not not realistic. If we were to measure what we're afraid of on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say, I don't know, I'll use an example of being afraid to speak in front of a bunch of people. On a scale of 1 to 10, for someone, they may feel that that may be a 9. But then if you compare it to saying, well, what if there was a grizzly bear in front of you and you were out on a nature walk? Like, how would you rate your fear? And they'd be like, oh, no, that's a 10, right? So it's saying in comparison, your fear of speaking in front of people, now you may be able to bring that down to, I don't know, a 3. So it's not ignoring your fears, but being able to push through them. I still struggle with social anxiety, so I avoid large groups of people wherever possible. I'm super sensitive to energy, so I get drained. But I don't allow it to steal my joy. I've been able to take my power back. The fear still exists, but I just push through it.
That's really powerful. My question was specifically, I'm curious to know what the first piece of proof that you got that this is relative, like my fear is relative. Because initially I was going to really ask if it was one decision that you made that allowed you to get more comfortable with other more challenging decisions. But maybe if you could speak to like the first piece of proof that you got of, oh, I did this thing that I, previously like built up in my head. Look at me, like I can do other hard things. Do you remember that first example?
That I can think of? Wow. So I know for me, it's been overcoming one fear at a time. And when I look at something that I'm afraid of now, I'm like, well, I did that other thing and I didn't die. Like something as simple as earlier this week, I went on a nature walk with my son and there was this massive suicide hill that people train on. And I've been looking at that hill for months and my son challenged me to run up that hill. And I did it. And I thought if I ever did, I'd die. but I didn't die. In terms of like thinking of the first major thing that I can think of is surviving my divorce and being a single mom. Like I was, I was a stay-at-home mom for almost 5 years. My ex-husband was the, breadwinner. He brought in all the money and we had a lifestyle where we had multiple properties and luxury cars and we were able to travel every month. And then to walk away from that and think that I would be able to survive keeping a roof over the kids' heads and foods in their mouth. So for me, that would be the first thing that comes to mind. And one of the biggest things that I didn't think I would be able to do, much less do successfully. So when people talk about success, to me, I believe that success is different to everyone. And the fact that I've been self-employed for 11, 12 years, single mother for all that time, and I've been able to keep a roof over my children's head and food in their mouth, and I can sleep in a warm bed at night, to me, that's success.
I completely agree. I'm curious what your practice is every day to really stand in your confidence. Like I know you talked about the fear always being there, and yes, like even from my personal experience, I don't think it ever goes away. It's there maybe in lesser amounts, but I'm wondering what your practice is when you say like you've been a single mom for the past decade, you've been able to grow your business really, and especially like over the past year, you talked about, your time during COVID is really accelerating your business and doing more like virtual talks and all of these things and really standing in your power. I'm wondering what your daily practices are to consistently show up, even when it's challenging or difficult.
What I've learned in the last few years is that my self-care is essential. I think in the beginning, when I became an entrepreneur and I was trying to push through my fears, I put everything else first and put myself last. And it was like, no, I have to do this because people are depending on me to show up at this event, or I have to do this because this is what the kids need, or I have to, but it was always someone else or something else. And now I have a pretty strict self-care routine where I make sure that I'm filling my cup first every day so that I have the capacity to pour into others. I don't know if that fully answers the question, but every single day I make sure in terms of my self-care that I'm filling my cup, mind, body, and soul, making sure that I am doing things that bring me joy, that help to put me on a higher vibration and to make sure that I am able to be my best self physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially. Mm-hmm. And I find in doing so, I have the energy to deal with the struggles and the adversities, because I would be depleted if I wasn't filling my cup first. Mm-hmm. So I make sure that I fill my cup and I serve from the saucer instead of, trying to pour from this empty cup. But in the process, so some of the things that I make sure I do every single day, meditating, because that calms my nervous system, especially since I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder. I need to make sure that I'm not in this constant fight or flight mode. So being able to meditate, being able to be still and have conversations with God, my active practicing gratitude. And when I say active, I mean, it's not just saying, yeah, I'm grateful for this. It's every single day intentionally writing in my gratitude journal and connecting what I'm grateful for to a feeling. So that lifts my vibration. Making sure that I'm drinking enough water to fuel me, making sure that I have enough sleep. I need, and I can tell you this, I need a minimum of 7 hours and 20 minutes every night, or I'm not a nice person. Making sure that I stay physically active. And I'm not that girl that you'll find working out multiple times in the gym. I will try to avoid the gym. I actually do just nature walks every single day, right? Doing trails. Some of them feel like you're on the Stairmaster. So there's multiple things that I do to make sure that I'm consuming what's good for me physically, mentally, emotionally, making sure that I'm reading something every day, listening to positive podcast every day. I call them like my non-negotiables. I have my morning routine and my evening routine. So it's broken down, but these are things that I have to do every single day to keep myself on a higher vibration, because it's easy to slip into the cycle of negative thought patterns and all those things. We're not programmed to wake up happy every day. So it's work. But then in terms of even using that to build my confidence, I think my confidence has come from my competence. So for example, when I started podcasting in 2018, I hated the sound of my own voice. I knew nothing about interviewing people. I knew nothing about the technicalities of it. So I wasn't confident in it. But now, doing that many interviews, recording that many episodes, and having to learn the technicalities over and over and over again of the process, my confidence in it now is way higher than it was 3 years ago, right? So sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to start a thing until I can perfect it, or until I, know how to do it well. Nothing starts out perfect. Babies don't come out walking. Like, there's a process. There's a process to it. So that idea of being perfect, I don't hold on to that. I hold on to the idea of excellence, but not the idea of being perfect. I believe also that my spiritual DNA is perfect because I know who my creator is. But I think that people hold themselves back from their greatness and the great that they desire because of their idea of perfection. So it's me learning how to do things along the way that builds my confidence, because I can look back at, whether it be a beginning episode and see my growth. I can look back at, branding that I did for myself years ago and see my growth. I can look back on those things and see the evolution. And that I'm proud of. So that's where my confidence in certain things come from.
Penny, coming through so many good points. I mean, the first part of your answer was around the habits that you have in place. And, imagine if you could do your nature walk once a month and like see the results that you have. It's like, no, this is something that I need to do daily.
Consistency. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's why it's called a practice, right? At the end of the day. And in your answers, I hope everyone else can see it, but Makini really, you took the time to learn about what your body needs, about what you specifically need, right? Maybe the next person does not need 7 hours and 20 minutes to feel rejuvenated in the morning. Maybe they need more, maybe they need less. But I think the one thing that I really like, the most important thing that I took from the beginning part of your answer was just learn yourself. And those things are going to change too, but you need to be kind of like listening to your body, right? And I had a question about the gratitude statement, the gratitude journal that you have. of tying like a blessing or something that you're grateful to an emotion or a feeling. Can you go deeper into that?
Absolutely. For some people, they see gratitude as fluff. They don't realize on a deeper level how that connects with your brain and your energy and your spirit. So just on the superficial level, saying, yeah, I'm grateful for life. Okay, well, when you say that, does that shift you in your heart, in your core? Did you feel anything, within your feelings? No, maybe not. Okay, what about life are you grateful for? Think about somebody you love. When you start to think about that person, that happy thought sets off a chemical reaction within your brain and then processes through your body, right? So our emotions, our feelings are really just labels for the vibrational level that we're on. So if I say that I'm happy, I'm on a high vibration. If I'm sad, I'm on a low vibration. So when I'm thinking about the things that I'm grateful for, I am trying to connect a feeling to it so I can shift the vibrational level that I'm on. And that's how it gets greater impact on my health, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And that other piece about the competence really fueling your confidence in a specific area, the podcast example that you shared of, looking back 2-3 years ago, it's so crazy because I look back on this stuff and like the first instinct to look at my own stuff is cringe. Like, oh my God, it was so bad. But we wouldn't be here if we didn't put out that first draft, right? And I think there's something to be said about, let me just try this. I have no idea where it's going to go, but it's going to evolve and you're going to become a better speaker. You're going to become a better, conversationalist. You're going to, XYZ, better researching guests and really like learning about different stories. And now you help people also build their podcast. So I was wondering if we can pivot a little bit and you can share a little bit about what that journey has been like for you as well.
Absolutely. So I've had my podcast for, I think we're coming up to 3 years. And, even when you mentioned before about, the global ranking of hitting the top 1.5% in the world, like that blows my mind. Every time my mind is blown and I have, sometimes I'm like, okay, God, is this a joke? But because I believe that the best way to show that you understand something is to teach it to someone else. And I also believe that God doesn't run out of blessings. So me teaching other people exactly what I've learned, how I've learned it, the tools that I use, I don't see that as, competition or a threat or, however else someone else may look at it. So I do these master classes and they're 3 hours long and I break down from start to finish everything you need to know, everything that I know about podcasting. And the beautiful part for me is when people who have taken my course come back and even ask me to be on their show because they, before the session, didn't think that it was possible for them to do that. And now they're doing the things that they were either once afraid of or didn't see as a possibility. And now they're doing those things. So I feel like I'm contributing a great deal when it comes to that, and just seeing the ripple effect of that. Whether it be them teaching other people how to do a podcast or whatever, just being able to help people tap into their full potential in all areas of their life is just something that excites me.
And how, I'm wondering, because you also do mindset coaching, right, Makini? And what you'd mentioned, I mean, it's kind of throughout the whole episode, but what you've mentioned about practices and keeping your cup full and really investing in your self-care, I'm wondering I highly doubt there's like a typical engagement and what that looks like with different clients, but I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about your framework and your approach, because what you'd mentioned earlier about your thoughts releasing like chemicals into your body and that impacting your emotions and what actually happens in your life, like what actualizes in your life. I hope that didn't like go over anybody's head, but I'm wondering if you could explain your work, what you walk through with people, and then if you could tie it in with the science and the spirituality piece as well, that'd be great.
With the mindset coaching sessions, my main sessions are using Bob Proctor's systems that I've learned as a consultant. So The trainings are structured, so they're guided sessions that are like relevant, simple, and practical to help you create the habits and the mindset that's essential to your success in all areas of your life. You know, helping to improve your business, your family relationships, and your relationship with yourself. And each session is focused on a different habit or thought process. So we may focus on things like goal setting. And when I say goal setting, not, you know, the average SMART goals, awareness, productivity, gaining control over your thoughts, your self-image, overcoming fear, your attitude, effective leadership, you know, creating masterminds, all kinds of things like that. So we focus on the different aspects that are required for your success. And what I find is the women that I work with, some of them are originally, like, they come for just personal development or they come for just business development. And the sessions show them how it all syncs together, because some people feel like, yeah, I just want to focus on business. Entrepreneurship is a personal development journey, right? We are developed as people through the experiences and the things that we have. So each session, because we're focusing on different elements that affect different areas of your life, they find improvement within their family and their relationships and with their children and within their business. So they're, you know, increasing their bottom line financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
These are all connected. Yeah. And yeah. I find it funny when people say, oh, like my life is 50% and then my work is 50% or my business is, and I'm like, actually it's just like everything is your life. And they take different, like some of these things are more intense in certain periods. And it's so cool that is revealed through your sessions. I mean, it's just a testament to your work and like how inclusive and also comprehensive it is. Like you come for one thing, but it might show you that there are needs in other areas as well. You kind of threw it in there around, you know, we don't focus on the typical or the mainstream approach to goal setting. So I'm wondering what your approach is and how it's maybe evolved over time. Like how do you look at achievement and building things and creating things?
Let's see if I can break those down. So how do I look at achievement? I'll answer that one first. So I used to see myself as a high achiever, someone who was constantly striving to achieve certain things. And I think in the last couple of years, I've shifted my focus to not being an achiever, but to being an impactor and a healer. And let's look at it this way. Society or culture versus nature. Culturally, we are taught to seek accolades and recognition and, you know, chase things, and there's competition and ends up being confusion. And I'm in a space of nature where I'm seeking peace and to be able to serve and to find connections and clarity and alignment. So that's the answer to the first part of your question. And let's see if I remember what the second part was.
You did a little bit of a knock on the SMART goal. So I'm wondering if there's a more spiritual way of approaching your goals and what it is that you create.
Yes. So with goal setting, I don't believe in SMART goals. And I learned that through Bob Proctor because they limit you. You know, when they talk about things that are, I don't know, measurable, I don't know. Well, I don't remember what SMART stands for, but they limit you, because if you're trying to reach for something only because you can see that thing is attainable, then you've limited how far you can reach. Right?
Oh, say that again, please.
if your goal for something is only something that you can reach, then that's not really stretching you. It's not doing what it's supposed to do, right?
So good. Yeah.
So we believe in what's called, we call them C goals. So I'll break it down quickly for you. So there's ABC goals. A goals are goals that you think you can reach, which is what most people are doing with their SMART goals, but they're limiting themselves, right? B goals are goals that you think you can reach if certain things fall into place. So, you know, someone may say, you know what, I'll write a book when such and such and such, right? So you attaining that goal is dependent on other things happening. But then there's C goals, which are fantasies to some people, but they're goals so big that they scare you. They're goals that stretch you beyond where you think you can go. So setting C goals and always having a C goal forces you to reach past what you believe is possible. So it's looking at that fantasy, that vision that if you were to tell most people, they'd be like, girl, you crazy. But that's only because their perspective or their level of awareness isn't there yet. But if you ask yourself, if you look at that fantasy goal that you have, that vision, and you say to myself, am I willing to do what it takes to get there? And am I able? Once you ask yourself those two questions, am I willing and am I able? You take that fantasy to a possibility, because now you're looking at it like, maybe it is possible. And if you can believe that it's possible, then you can make that a reality, right? So a lot of the big goals that we work on, we do through manifestation, but manifestation isn't just about thinking about a thing, right? It's coming into alignment with the energy or the spirit, whether you want to call it vibe, spirit, energy, it's all the same thing, but it's coming into alignment so that you can make that thing happen. I grew up going to church, well, originally with the neighbors until I started going with my family, but everyone always talked about, just pray for things. And I believe that there's so much more to it than that. And I've learned through Bob Proctor systems how to actually put action and intention behind a prayer to make it possible. And that's what manifestation is. You're praying for a thing. And sometimes we pray for things and we're like, you know what? I've been praying for the same thing for all these years and nothing happened. Well, maybe there's a couple things in place. Maybe you actually don't believe what you're praying for, or maybe you have not become the person that you need to be in order to receive that thing. You're not in alignment for what it is that you're praying for, right? So when it comes to big C goals and being able to manifest things, some key things come into place. Vibrationally, and so what space are you in when you're asking for these things? Because we need to come from a place of love, and love is a high vibration. Because if you're praying for things and you're on a low vibration, you're blocking.
Not coming through. The message can't get through.
Right? It's not going to come through. Exactly. And when you're on a low vibration praying for things, you are not being the version of you that you need to be to align with that. That prayer may have manifested in that moment, but it is at that place and time where you need to be to receive it, right? And then coming from a place of service when you're manifesting things, because a lot of people try to manifest things out of ego, and it's not the right form to receive it in. So, how are you willing to be of service to attract that thing that you are looking for? How are you able to be a solution and to provide for the greater good, whether it be your family, your community, or the world at large? And then what I talked about earlier about belief, people don't believe in what they're really asking for. They don't believe that it's possible. So any form of doubt, worry, or fear that you put behind that, you're blocking that from coming through. And then having patience, because if we pray for a thing, we want it right now. Time is a man-made thing. We created that for us. So having patience and waiting to receive things on God's time and not our time. So I don't know if that broke it down, adding the spiritual.
It did.
Just wanted to make sure I fit with it.
I was snapping. I was asking you to repeat. No, thank you. Thanks for breaking it down at that level. That was really helpful. And you talked about service, and you talked about impact and what those things mean to you. I'm also of the belief that, our purpose is not necessarily tied to what it is like that we're doing, whether it's a job, whether it's a business. And I'm curious to know what drives you every day.
So what drives me? I used to answer the question about my why, and the answer used to always be my kids. But I realize it's far greater than that. And although my kids are the greatest blessing that I have, I believe that I wasn't only put here on this earth to serve my children, if that makes sense, right? So I believe that I'm a healer, but that comes from my own pain. Like, our pains birth our purpose. After 150 interviews, there's a commonality between all the women who are sharing their stories of resilience on my podcast. They were able to find their purpose and to be able to walk in their calling from something that happened to them through their pain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah.
So our pains force us to pay attention. So we don't want other people to feel that pain. We want to help prevent other people from feeling that pain. So we try to find solutions for that pain. I was listening to another podcast. I think it was Oprah or maybe it was Jay Shetty. I can't remember. But they were talking about success is influenced by our trauma. And majority of people who are extremely successful, it was influenced by their trauma and their passion to heal and to help others to heal. So when we're looking at, people sometimes say, well, I don't know what my passion is or my purpose is. Well, what do you need to heal from? And how can you use that to help others? And there are some people that may feel, because there are some people who are not ready to deal with their childhood wounds or their past traumas or pains. So they'll say, well, I don't have anything negative to focus on. I don't have any traumas. Okay, well, what are you good at? What's your area of genius? And how can you use that to serve?
Yeah. Through the show also, it's been pretty interesting to see how people have really just changed their story about a particular experience. And for one example that I will share is just around some folks who, maybe you see them today building community and bringing people together and really fostering those connections. And then you come to find out that in their childhood, they were bullied and they never felt connected and they never had, a strong support system. And so that piece about reflecting back on what your own experiences are and looking at that and working through those things might reveal stuff to you that maybe you've glossed over, right? Or it's a memory that you've suppressed. So Thank you for sharing that.
I think a lot of people don't spend enough time with themselves, getting to know themselves. The same way that you'd want to get to know another person, you spend time with them, right? You learn to study them, what their likes are, what their dislikes are, what pushes their buttons. But a lot of people are so consumed with what other people are doing that they're not reflecting and looking at themselves and looking deeper at the cause of why they do a lot of the things that they do. I used to have certain habits that I couldn't explain. And I won't go into too much detail, but I remember my kids used to laugh at me because I used to have an obsession with buying toilet paper, and it had to be the highest quality of toilet paper. and in my last house, my storage closet, this was, pre-pandemic when people were overbuying toilet paper. So that used to be me. So I couldn't understand what my obsession was. Every time I went into Walmart, I would have to buy, at least 2 things of expensive toilet paper. And it's because growing up in government housing, when you had 1-ply toilet paper and sometimes you didn't have any, it stemmed from a trauma that I wasn't aware of until I dug deeper into it. So now that I know that exists, I don't overstock on toilet paper.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a really great example of things that it's just, we've always done it that way. Yeah. Right. And then asking yourself, I think it takes asking yourself the right questions, or someone making a comment and you're like, why do I do that? Yeah. And then giving yourself the space to explore. For the last question, I'd love for you to share, something happening in your industry right now that, or just in the culture and society at large that you're really, have your eye on, that you're really intrigued about. It could be anything.
I would say the current state of the world right now, especially with the pandemic and these multiple lockdowns, the effects that is having and is going to have in the future on people's mental health, the decline in mental health. And I think as a mindset coach, as much as I enjoy what I do, it's going to be a lot of work to help people to heal and reprogram and to come out of that state, because the pandemic and these lockdowns and things that people see in the media have put a lot of people into a space of fear and anxiety and all the things that we've been working so hard to help people heal from. And now, because of how things have happened, it's a huge part of the population that is dealing with living in fear and anxiety. Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of having to provide solutions and to make a greater impact.
Yeah. And this is why I absolutely love the work that you have been doing for the longest time. And I can only imagine the amount of people who have maybe witnessed your journey, come into contact with you, gone through your coaching, and they are then maybe they're not necessarily a mindset coach, but they can take those practices of healing and supporting other people and doing it through their own, in their own way and through their own work. And so it has a ripple effect, the work that you're doing, Makini. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much. It's been quite the journey. I have to be a product of the product, but like you said, I love seeing clients that have gone through my coaching and they are now becoming coaches in their area of genius. And like you said, that ripple effect, that domino effect, sometimes we don't realize the impact that we're making. And for some people, especially when you're starting out, it may seem small or insignificant, but the smallest thing can mean the world to someone else. And that impact can be far greater than you will ever imagine.
I agree. Thank you. Thanks for being here. But what's the best place for people to connect with you?
So, like you mentioned, I like to play most on my personal Instagram page. But the easiest way to find me is Google, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the podcast platforms. Everything is under Makini Smith or Walk in My Stilettos.
Thank you. And we will catch you in the next episode.
To all you legacy leavers out there, until next time, subscribe on all platforms. Don't forget to rate the show and leave us a review on Apple Podcast. And I just want to thank each and every single one of you that continues to listen each week that helped the show globally rank in the top 1.5% of most popular shows out of over 2.8 million podcasts. If you can think of one person that would receive value from today's show, please share it with them. Feel free to screenshot this week's episode, and you can tag myself at The Real Makini Smith, and you can tag Naomi at Naomi Haile. That's NaomiHaile. And continue to walk in greatness in your stilettos in a manner worthy of your calling.